start my recording. We're going to record today's demonstration so that we can send it out to those of you who were unable to make today's webinar, but perhaps registered. And because we're recording, we're keeping everybody on mute during our presentation. There will not be any questions and answers section to today's webinar, as we're trying to keep things under 30 minutes just to respect everybody's time. I know everybody's busy and webinared out, so we're trying to keep things to a minimum. If you do have questions or contact information, we will definitely provide our contact information at the end of the webinar so that you can get in touch with us if anything comes up. So we'll just get started without further ado. So let's see here. We kind of did a little bit of introduction, or Dion did, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Misty Palik. I'm a seasoned and certified Sage 100 Contractor Implementation Specialist. I actually used Sage 100 Contractor in industry for 11 years when I worked for a general contractor. So in the past 6 years, I've actually helped clients just like you get over hurdles, depending on, I've done everything from process people's accounts payable to their payroll to develop a custom report, or a lot of times people just call me because they don't know what the next step is. So I end up helping them figure out what the next step is for their business. You know, how could they better use Sage 100 Contractor, or do they have any process flows that might be a benefit to them that I know about that they need to know about? So I spent the last 6 years just kind of doing that. And then the learning objectives today, as per the registration email, were to review of fiscal calendar year-end closing process. The decision point: do you combine your archives, meaning do you combine your payroll and your company archive together, or do you keep them separate? What adjustments can be made prior to year end after you close your books, and then how to make prior year adjustments after the closing. So some things changed within Sage 100 Contractor over the years, so they changed how the prior year adjustments can be made. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Today's presentation is actually more about theory and accounting than it is, you know, going into Sage 100 Contractor and showing you around, only because most of you have had Sage 100 Contractor for long enough to know the ins and outs of that. So we wanted to keep it kind of at a theory level so that, you know, we weren't boring you with details. But if you do have problems or concerns, you know, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you any way that we can. So that's kind of today. And then, of course, we'll give you our contact information and the next steps. We do have some other webinar lunch and learn scheduled, so we'll kind of throw out the schedule to you so you can see that. And Dion will be sending out an email with everybody, you know, to register for the next events. So we'll just kind of get started. So the 5 W's of S100 CRE, which is an acronym I kind of made up for myself because I kind of got sick of writing or saying Sage 100 Contractor. So this is what I call it. There are several different versions of Sage flavors. I think there's over 30 flavors of Sage. So I always have to specify with clients, you know, maybe new clients even, to say what flavor of Sage are you using, because there are many. So that's how we kind of acronym that. So questions. So before we get started, I know that I'm on camera and you guys are probably cameraed out, but internally, I love this icebreaker. So we're going to kind of do a would you rather thing, because I just think it's fun. And we'll get to the questions, of course. But so would you rather? So you can do this internally, and I'm going to make sure I can see myself on my camera so you guys can see me. So if the answer, so we do this a lot with my staff of, you know, we kind of do a head and shoulders trivia thing once a week just to kind of break the monotony of webinars. So if the answer to my next question is A, meaning it's the first option, I want you to tap your head. And you can do it internally. I'm going to do it too. But if you want to just tap your head so that you can know the answer is A. And then if the answer is B, tap your shoulder. Okay, so we're just kind of do this just internally, just for a little fun, you know, break up the monotony, like I said. And we are going to, so here's my question. And this is a good one. So would you rather, I'm sure we've all played that game, especially if you have kids. My kid loves to play this game. So would you rather be on a beach soaking up the sun? That's option A. Remember, that's tap your head. Or would you rather be in the Smoky Mountains in a cabin back in the woods at Christmas time? So those are your two would you rathers. So for me, it's definitely going to be the beach because I'm a sun girl and I love the sunshine and I love being at the beach. So that one is totally for me, right? So in the essence of our game here, the next two questions, as you can see on the screen, are kind of would you rather too, of do you process payroll in Sage 100 Contractor? And why this question matters, and I can't see all of you, but if you're saying to yourself, yes, I process payroll. No, I don't process payroll in Sage 100 Contractor. It makes a difference as to the things that we're going to talk about and what things will pertain to you today. And the same for inventory. Do you use the inventory module? It's kind of, from my experience over all my clients, it's probably 50-50 for either one of these options. But this makes a difference in how you're processing your data and just moving forward with the year-end process. Okay, so let's see. So that's our fun for today. Just you'll be thinking about that all day, going, I'm on the beach, I'm on the beach, I'm on the beach, right? Or I'm in the Smoky Mountains, depending on what you want to do. Okay, so let's get into the 5 W's of Sage 100 Contractor. And okay, so when we're talking about this subject of year end, there are really two different things that we're talking about here. One is, actually closing your accounting as internally as an accountant, part of your firm's processes, of closing the accounting versus closing out Sage 100 Contractor for the year. These are two different subjects that we need to cover. So I found this little, I Googled, of course, I'm all about the Google Meister. And so I Googled why close at year end? Why do you close at year end, or even month end, quarter end, day end, whatever it is that you close at? Why do small businesses, why do business owners need to close? It's actually a really important process to close. And you can read here, obviously, I'm sure all of you can read this description, but I thought it was interesting to mention. So many times clients have come to me and they're like, I have a box of receipts, or I have a garage full of receipts, and I want you to figure out how to get my taxes done. Well, as an accountant, that's not really fun for me, and I don't really want to deal with your receipts. And especially in the day and age of COVID, I definitely don't want to touch your receipts. So, when you're thinking about closing for the year end, it's a great time to reflect on the past year, clean up your books, making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and everything is in order, so that when you give this set of reports to your tax accountant, your CPA, that's whoever is doing your taxes, it's clean and it's orderly. So that's a great reason to actually close out your accounting books, is to just clean up stuff before you're handing it over to somebody to do your taxes for you. And then the other point is cleaning it up inside of Sage 100 Contractor. Obviously, there are some techniques and procedures inside of Sage that are specific just to Sage 100 Contractor. So we're going to give you a little bit of insight about those. So let's talk about the other why. So if you were pat your head on the payroll question, then you're going to be holding your hand up there for a second, because if you are doing your payroll processing inside of Sage 100 Contractor, then Sage actually requires you to close out your payroll, archiving it to a different company file before you can actually post new payroll into the system. Now, it used to be that you couldn't actually even process payroll until you got that done. Now you have a little bit of time. You should not process your W-2s until you have archived your payroll company or your payroll module. So that's kind of the defining point for that. So payroll requires it. And then what I recently ran into with a client is their backup of Sage 100 Contractor of their company database takes an hour and a half every single night. And the reason that is because they have inventory. and they have 40,000 parts within their inventory database inside of Sage 100 Contractor. And at first thought, you think 40,000, that's a lot of parts, but they actually use them, and they use them well. So how you can help clean up your backups, and this is a big indicator of if your company is really needing to be archived, is you can judge it by, are your backups taking an hour and a half? They really should not be taking that long. That means, at the end of the day, Sage 100 Contractor is just a giant database. And as time goes on and you're adding records, meaning AP, AR, payroll, any kind of records that you're adding in there, it's making the database bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if your backups are taking a long time every night, and hopefully you're backing up because that's really important, but if your backups are taking a long time, then it's probably time to archive. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that in the how. So just kind of a thought process here, of helps with database size and backups. And then, let's talk about the difference between fiscal and calendar year. So as accounting people, we know that there's a difference between fiscal and calendar year, meaning that your fiscal year usually ends, it's not a calendar year. It doesn't end on December 31st and start on January 1st. It might end at July 31st. That's a pretty common one. So the physical closeout with inside of Sage 100 Contractor is a little bit different than the calendar year. But in theory, it's the same process. You're just closing out at a different time. So I, of course, Googled this too, but I thought this was really interesting because of recent developments one of my clients takes 45 days to close their books on a monthly basis. So it takes them 45 days to actually get everything cleaned up. Now, they're a ginormous organization with many entities, so it's totally respectable, that takes so long to actually close their books. But I thought it was really interesting that Google said that, most companies, it took 10 days, which I don't really think 10 days is unreasonable as an accountant. If I were doing all the work myself, I feel like 10 days is pretty good. If I could get it done in 4.8 days, wow, I'm pretty awesome. So I thought this chart was pretty interesting, just to sort of think about, how many days does it take you to close your books on a monthly basis. So I thought that was interesting. So thought I'd share. Now let's talk about the when, right? So payroll obviously is yearly, even if you're physical or calendar year, it doesn't matter. Payroll is, ran through the entire year, and you do W-2s, they're due by January 31st. So, payroll must be yearly. You're forced to archive. You do not have a choice in that matter inside of Sage 100 Contractor. And then for the current company, just your company, it is recommended that you do it every other year. So, right now you should have 2018, anything less than 2018 should be archived. And if you don't know, if you haven't experienced the archiving process, which I've noticed a lot of clients aren't archiving, and that's why their databases are so big. But what it really does is it packages up all of your data for that year for your company, and it puts it over in the archive. So it's taking out all the records. It's not deleting anything. It's just taking out all the records, packaging them up with a nice little bow, and putting them in the archives. So when you need to go look at 2018 transactions, you actually go into a different company file within Sage 100 Contractor so that you can, view those transactions from 2018 or whatever year that you need to look at. So that's really recommended, and that's a Sage recommendation that every other year you should be archiving your company data, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and outgrow the filing cabinet. So some things to keep in mind of before you actually do the archival process. Payroll is a whole nother animal, and we're actually going to have a webinar just on payroll. But some things to think about are, being sure that all your payroll records have been posted, being sure that all your GL checks, AP checks, equipment checks that you want recorded in that current year are posted. Post all your cash receipts, post your year-end inventory. If you were the yes for inventory, you can put your hand on your head. You're posting your year-end inventory count. And then make sure that there are no uncleared checks on your bank reconciliation from the prior year. So you want to make sure that all of that is cleaned up. Something interesting about that, I actually have a client here, and I'm in Iowa, so I have a client here in Iowa, and they had some checks from 2016 still open on their bank rec. And even though they had archived, they just left them there. Once you archive and those checks actually, don't get removed, it will not remove those checks because they're in open status. They're really hard to get rid of after the fact. Okay, obviously they haven't cleared for a couple years. They're just really difficult to get rid of if you've moved on, if you've archived that year. Keep that in mind. And Iowa actually has a website that you could go to. So my client had this issue. They had a 2016 check that hadn't cleared, and there's something called it's like a Iowa treasurers.gov treasure hunt. That's what it's called. So you could go there, and in they're called ASKEET laws. And Iowa, they are anyways. And so they have these ASKEET laws that if a person doesn't cash a check that you've written to them, they can come back a year later and say, you have to reissue the check to me. So that money is theirs. But then after a year, the ASKEET laws say that you have to turn it over to the state, that money has to be submitted to the state. And then the state can either try to find that person, or after a certain period of time, the money just goes to the state. So I discovered that for myself, I personally went out there and looked, and I had like $250 sitting out there from a license transfer that I had done years ago. And this money was just sitting there waiting for me. So I got a check for $250. Who knew, right? It was pretty crazy. So just think about that, that you want your books to be clean. You shouldn't have any uncleared stuff from years ago. Maybe check your local ASKEET laws and figure out what that looks like for you. So just a story helps create memories, right? Okay, so let's talk about the who. Okay, so most companies, I've seen a mixed bag. Most companies, they have somebody designated as their super user inside of Sage 100 Contractor, so they can do anything that they want to do in there. So this must be done at if you're ready to archive your company year, it has to be done at the server level. A lot of companies have what I call a pseudo server, meaning it's really not a server, it's just a computer sitting in someone's office. Maybe it's stored locally, and that they are calling that computer their Sage 100 Contractor license server. And Dion and I were just talking about this yesterday, but how amazing it was back in the day, when you had the MB7 folder inside of Sage 100 Contractor, so you could just control all this with your file explorer. So I could copy companies, I could rename companies, I could move companies so no one else could see them. Like it was a little bit easier, but it was kind of a free for all too. You could really screw up the database if you weren't careful. So what Sage did when they switched to a SQL platform a few years ago, they really changed that process, which I will talk about here in a minute. So you must be a company administrator to actually even get into the database administrator, because that's, high level security stuff. And speaking of security, Sage 100 Contractor has enterprise level security, which means that you develop security roles and then you apply those roles to the users. And the reason that is important to understand is because not every system has that enterprise level security. And it's really helpful if you have a lot of turnover. So if you have a bunch of employees constantly going in and out of Sage 100 Contractor, and then you have a lot of turnover and you have 5 employees leave, then you have to go and edit their all those security roles also, instead of just changing their access. So it just helps with security down the road if you're a big organization or a bigger organization that you have a lot of users and a lot of turnover. So let's get into the where, right? And so you heard me talk about the MB7 folder. Those of you who have been with Sage 100 Contractor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're going, yeah, I miss those days. Those were good days, right? But back in 2015, Sage actually bought this product, Master Builder, and they changed it. Well, I think they bought it a little bit before, but they changed the SQL platform, changed it to a SQL platform. And when they did that, they changed how the database was managed. So you can no longer go to the MB7 folder and just do whatever you wanted to. Now you're forced into using the database administrator, which isn't all bad. I mean, it has some nice security functionality, and it packages the data for you, so you don't have to wrap those Christmas presents that you're going to the Smoky Mountains with yourself. Sage does that for you now. So in the database administrator, again, this could live on the server, it could live locally if you're just like a one-man show and you've got Sage installed on your desktop or whatever. But this is where you access the database administrator to archive your company. And you can see here in the image, this is what it looks like. You're going to archive your oldest fiscal year. And what that means is, you'll just select the company that you want to archive. And this is a yearly process, right? So if you had done 2017 the last time, it's going to archive 2018. So it knows what year you're on, right? And then in the current year, so in the current year's company, so you would choose the current year's company, like your regular database that you're flowing in and out of, right? And I'll show you a little bit around it in Sage 100 Contractor here in just a second too. So normally, only remember that you have enterprise level security, so only a super admin has access to this, or a company admin. And then how do you connect to it? You have the choice of using your SQL authentication, which came with the new SQL platform, meaning that you have a specific SQL login information into the database administrator, or you can use your Windows authentication depending on your company's situation. There is a difference. I always recommend, when I'm implementing Sage 100 Contractor, that we do SQL authentication just as an extra layer of security. And so if somebody were to come up to my computer and I was not logged into Sage, but I was logged into my computer, they would not be able to get into Sage and see your financial information. So it's just a nice layer of protection. So I usually recommend the SQL authentication versus the Windows, but just depends on your company situation. Okay, so let's talk about the how. And this is where we're going to pop over here into Sage. And within Sage, on the home and resources, if you haven't discovered this already, Sage is really good about their help files. And I go here all the time, even myself, even though I've used the product forever and a day, there are still things that I need to look up. So if you're ever looking for the help topics, in any screen, you can use the F1 key. But you can also come here to the Home and Resources tab, and you can see all the help topics, get help from here too. Under Product Documents is the year-end guide. So that is what we are talking about today, and it popped up here in my other monitor. You'll notice that this comes directly from Sage, and they update in your database every year. This came out in January 2020, so I imagine another one will be coming out January 2021. This thing is awesome. It really is. I mean, it is a great checklist of things to do prior to doing your year-end archive. Is it just payroll? Is it physical? It just tells you, what the process is, what it means, and then it has really awesome, so I'm just scrolling down here, it has really awesome checklists. And I usually print this when I'm doing an archive, because I help a lot of companies through their archive because they're scared. They're just like, I don't know what to do, Misty. I'm like, well, first you make a backup. Backup is very important, and then we can do the archiving process. So they just have a nice checklist. I print this, I write numbers down, I look at my record count. You just walk through the process. It's very user friendly, I think. And it just has a nice checklist of what to do beforehand and what to do during, and then what to do afterwards. So it's nice. So Sage automatically updates that for you every year. And something new to Sage, Dion and I were talking about yesterday, I've seen some clients who haven't done the updates for maybe even a year, maybe even in 2020, they haven't done the updates. So I sort of think that this came about in early 2020, but you now have a messages functionality down here, which is pretty cool. And that messages, I don't have any, but if I did, if I had a company update or a year-end email. It used to be that you had to wait for the email to come from Sage, and then you'd click on the link to the to the year-end guide, and you'd have to go through all that process. But now it just stores it right in here in messages. So if you have any updates or anything, it's going to come in through this Sage messages. You'll see a little number pop up here. So they kind of have a lot of help. And again, that was under product documents, year-end guide. They have the release notes. Anything that you need to know is underneath this product documents, which is just really nice. But the help topics is really nice if you need to search through things and stuff like that. Okay, so let's pop back over to our PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Okay, so we kind of talked about the how. And let's, because we are coming up on 12 o'clock, I can't believe I've spent a half an hour with you fine folks already. Time flies when you're having fun, or or flies, or it's fun until you're having flies. Maybe that's it. So here's kind of what's next. These are the, quick lunch and learns. Again, we're trying to keep it to 30 minutes so that we don't take up too much time. But these are what's next. You can see we're going to do 1099s. That's always my favorite I love to tell people, get your act together, clean up your vendors, get a W-9. This is very important, right? And so the 1099 process is not monitored real tightly, I think, from the IRS, but I'm a pretty good advocate for just saying, let's get it together and make them right the first time. And then we've got year-end preparation, archiving your company data, and then payroll archiving, and then finally W-2 in January. So this is just kind of the outline for what's next. And then thank you for joining us. I think in this day and age, saying thank you is so important. So important. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for joining me today. It's been really fun. I hope you've gotten some good insight out of this and maybe got you to think about going to the beach or the Smoky Mountains, as well as archiving your company data and the importance of it. So this is Dion's information. He knows how to get a hold of me. And if you guys need anything, reach out to Dion, and then we'll make it happen. So that's all I have for you fine folks today. Thanks again.